Hey guys, thanks for joining me. Really appreciate you guys taking some time out of your Sunday or weekend to join me. We had a YouTube live yesterday, and I'm going to start with a little bit of housekeeping. So yesterday went really long. I've now consolidated some ideas, and I want to go over whether or not you should allow your Canon C200 to burn in that Canon LUT when you're capturing in RAW and then also recording the proxies, because there's some really, you lose a lot of detail, and that's what I'm going to actually show you guys in today's video. So I'm also going to do the best that I can at responding to the chat, but I'm on my own, so just bear with me. I'm doing the switching by myself, and I'm also going to be monitoring the stream by myself. But again, thank you, all of you, for showing up and actually wanting to watch some of this stuff and geek out with me. If anybody cannot hear me, if you would please mention it in the chat, I would appreciate it. I'm assuming, because I'm looking at my levels, that all is okay, but that's clearly an assumption. So with that, I'm going to take these off because they make my ears red and really warm. And let's jump right on in. So I'm going to show you guys what it is that I'm talking about here. So this is now my resolve, and I'm going to show you by going into my edit tab here that I have clips that are side by side. So this is the raw clip, and in fact, where's my inspector? Well, CRM, there we go. So this is a CRM file. Actually, we could see it right here. So I guess I didn't need to turn that on. But this is a Canon CRM file, and then this is an MXF file. And the differences between the two, this one obviously has more color. You could see it here as the morning sky, or as the sun was rising. There's a lot more color baked in. And then this is what the camera actually captured in RAW. And yes, there is some noise, but as you probably already know, when you're capturing in RAW, sharpening does not exist, noise reduction does not exist, any of the image processing essentially does not exist. So RAW is actually taking whatever's coming out of the sensor and then punching it into their container, which in this case is a CRM file. So here are my initial thoughts, right? So going back, this is my raw clip, and then this is my MXF file, which is my proxy file with the baked in LUT. I'm going to go to a larger screen so we can actually see this a little bit better. And you can see that the way that I exposed, I didn't crush any shadows, and I didn't blow out any highlights in this particular take at this particular time. When I started, I did blow some highlights, and of course I was shooting this in RAW. I was actually in the beginning of this, because the light was changing, I was about 1 1/3 stop overexposed. And then of course, as the clouds continue to roll in and block out some of that light, then it sort of normalizes again. But this is the MXF file, which I actually think it looks okay, other than the fact that it looks washed out. But that's just one clip, so let's go over some of these other clips so you guys can sort of see where I'm going to go with this. So again, this is MXF file, here's my RAW file. In this next clip, this is my RAW file. And again, there is noise. We can see noise all around here because no noise processing has been applied. If I look at the actual baked in file, look at how much detail I've lost all around here. These columns have no detail. I can't really see any of the steps. The information inside of this clamshell which are all windows, glass windows, window panes. It's all completely gone. And this is what the actual sensor was able to see. So, in my opinion, if you need to upload to the web immediately, hopefully your lighting is on point, because if it isn't, you're going to lose quite a bit of detail. And can you bring some of that back? We'll try it later on in the video, but again, just going through some examples really quickly here so that I don't waste anybody's time. So let's go on to the next clip. And in fact, I'm going to actually turn on my clips so I can see them. I'm going to hide my timeline, save a little bit of space. So here is now a raw clip, again, Sydney Opera House. Is there noise? I'm sure there is. And of course, I was trying to make sure I nailed focus. And what I want you to do is pay attention to this area here. Okay? So this is, or these are steps that go down, because the Sydney Opera House has multiple levels. And this is a stairwell that everybody's supposed to walk on this side, not on this other little tiny narrow side. And this area where I'm pointing at now, you can actually go underneath the steps, and it looks like it's a way for them to load, like if you were unloading, say, a new stage or sound stage or something. It looks like that's an area where they might be able to access it from. Now, when we look at the exact same clip with the LUT baked in, look at how much we lose. But not just lose, right? All of a sudden, the entire image got really, really milky, and not in a hipster type of way, but more in a, like an amateurish type of way. And we're going to try to bring some of this back and try to add some contrast so that this gets a little bit cleaned up and more punchy. But for my taste, this, like, I wouldn't want to just upload this to the web. It doesn't look the way that I would want it to look. So let's look at another clip. So this clip is actually shot at ISO 800. So this is a properly exposed clip, as you can see from my scopes. And let me make the waveform a little bit bigger so you can see it. I'm doing this live broadcast, by the way, from my MacBook Pro, which of course it's going to make everything move a little bit slower. So bear with me on that note too. Hopefully there's some value in all of this for you. But what you can see very quickly is exactly how it is that I exposed. So this is a properly exposed image, right? And if we go over to the XF AVC file, we can still see that the exposure is there. The contrast is kind of missing, which we're going to make sure that we add. But even in this shot, for my taste, that's a little too, how do I say this? It's too washed out. It's not hearty enough, and it doesn't look, in my opinion, cinematic for what it is, right? For what it's worth. So let's go back and look at this one more time here. It's not bad in that we didn't end up clipping any information, not in the shadows and definitely not in the highlights. So from that sense, it's actually a pretty good deal. Let's look at another clip quick. So this is the Sydney skyline, basically opposite of what the Opera House is. And for any of you that actually care, we were staying in the hotel, not this hotel, but the hotel that's right behind it here is where we ended up staying. And it's the Intercontinental. That hotel is better than awesome. So if you guys ever have a chance to go in there, even if you just go in there and like grab dinner or a drink or something, it's totally worth it. It's really cool. Back to the point of this video. So this is the raw, and then this is the baked in Canon LUT. And what I'm noticing here the most is really a hue shift. So it looks like the magentas are maybe a little too aggressive. The sun was coming up, so it is possible. It's totally doable and possible that maybe that's the reason why some of my colors are off. But the lack of detail, like on these bar stool legs, in the way that these shadows are just not pure black or darker, and this seawall has zero texture, it just kind of bothers me. Because while there is noise here, there is also texture. And there is definitely separation in the legs here in the raw, which again, I'm gonna show you guys sort of what it is, what I do essentially to make all of this workable or work. So let's move on to another quick clip, and then I'm going to jump right into what I believe is a better option. So this is, again, Sydney Opera House, the raw version, the baked in version. Baked in version, definitely not enough contrast, and we can see from the waveform that the highlights, which is this very specific highlight, nope, it's this highlight. Yep, this light is clipping the way that it was captured. On the raw clip, it is definitely not clipping. So we have some headroom on the highlight side, and we also have some headroom on the shadow side. I have more clips to show you guys, but essentially it's the same story. We lose detail with the baked in clips. Like we can't see any of what's through the windows or the panes. And look at these rafters here. And if I show you the other version, it gets very soft very quickly. And granted, this is 4K raw and this is 2K proxy, right? But now let's just quickly, I'm gonna move the scopes out of the way, and let's see what happens if we take, so this is gonna be a shameless plug. So any of you who are there, what is your camera raw settings? Okay, sure, yeah, I can show you what my camera raw settings are. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my example of adding a LUT, which is why, or what it is that I was basically going to say. This is a shameless plug on my Canon C200 Pro raw LUT pack, okay? So I'm going to show you what dropping my LUT with no other corrections actually does for this, and then how it is that you can leverage raw controls to then make it look much better than what you could do burning it into a proxy file or even burning it into your actual MP4 that you might want to use for your project. So I'll show that here in a second. So let's move on. Again, I'm doing the switching by myself, so bear with me here. And thank you, Victor, for that comment. Really appreciate it. Good to know that you guys are getting good quality viewing experience and the sound is not completely horrible. Which, by the way, again, just yesterday I was using a lavalier mic and it really bothered me a lot. So today I'm using the good old Sennheiser 416. Can't go wrong with that microphone. It's just, it works. All right, so check this out, guys. I have nothing in here, right? My raw camera settings is basically, let's do clip. So this is as it was shot. So my color temperature was 5600, and you can see I did absolutely nothing else to my clip. So I'm going to go to my LUTs, and I'm going to add 3D LUTs, Medion Q C200 raw LUTs, and I'm going to go with the one everybody seems to really enjoy, which is the Arri Alexa lookalike. So this picture, to me, I'm going to move my scopes again, looks like it came alive, right? And by the way, there is a slight magenta shift on the Arri Alexa lookalike, because for some reason, not for some reason, because every time that I've ever shot with Arri Alexa, that is something that I've actually noticed and have seen. So in my LUT, I tend to exaggerate that a little bit to give it the Arri Alexa look-alike, which is why I call it that exactly. All right, so let's go back to the actual picture. So then this is the raw. I'll show you, I'll turn this off. That's what I captured. I drop in the LUT, so this is a one-click correction. And this is where I'm at. And you can see I still have some headroom to bring down some shadows. And I have a lot of headroom on the highlights. When I compare this to the burnt-in Canon LUT on my proxy file, this looks really washed out. It doesn't really look cinematic to me. This looks with a lot more contrast and a lot more pleasing in a lot of ways. I'm going to change the LUT on purpose here, because we're talking about my Canon C200 Pro LUT pack, and I'm going to go with my Netflix LUT. So this is a lot more punchy, and granted there is still some noise because it was shot in RAW. I'm going to have to apply some denoising, right? But isn't this a much more pleasing image than this one? I mean, what do you guys think? If you do, let me know, in the comments. If you guys think that this burnt-in LUT is better than mine, I'm not going to get my feelings hurt. Seriously, I won't get my feelings hurt. So let me know that too, because feedback is always appreciated. That's how we all learn, and that's how we all evolve. So I'm a big fan of feedback, whether it's positive, marginal, or negative. It gives me an idea or a sense as to where things are going. So going back again, this is Canon burnt-in LUT. This is my HBO LUT on the RAW file itself. Now, check this out. And I did something similar to this, which it doesn't work exactly the same way. What I'm about to show you guys with the RAW controls, it doesn't work exactly the same way on Red Code RAW. But that doesn't mean that the Canon RAW Lite is not terrific, okay? The Red Code RAW actually remaps the entire tonal curve or the gamma curve for the entire signal whenever it is that you make adjustments to ISO. In Resolve, we can't do that with Canon RAW Lite, but it doesn't mean we can't make extreme adjustments without adversely affecting the image, right? Because it's all non-destructive until we actually export the file. So with that, I'm going to show you what it is that I would do if this was a clip that I needed to clean up. So of course, I'm going to change my settings to clip. I'm going to leave my color temperature to 5600 because I like the way that the colors are rendering. And then for my exposure, I'm actually going to increase my exposure by, I think I got a good 1.5, maybe 2 stops that I can increase it. Well, that's a little bit more than 1.5, so I'm going to do just 1.5. So my whole image got a whole lot brighter, right? And yes, we can see noise, and we're going to deal with that here in a few. But to help this, I'm now going to bring my highlights down. And I like to put my highlights between 768 and 896, ideally. Well, too much. And again, this is my MacBook, so, you know, editing raw on a laptop, especially an Apple laptop, is probably something I should not be doing. And more, believe it or not, I am considering going with a different option. Okay, then the only other adjustment that I would make from here is I will actually lower my lift. And that's to allow, well, it's too aggressive. So I'm going to do negative 1.2. I think I could bring that even more, so negative 1.5. Try this again. 230. Okay, so now I have contrast that I'm a lot happier with. And see this white point in the cloud, actually I want that to be brighter, because you guys know when the clouds get hit with direct sunlight, they pop, right? Like they look like they demand attention. They absolutely catch your eye, and I want that cloud to do that same thing. So I'm going to add some gain to increase my highlights a bit. That might be too much. So I'm going to do 1.75. Okay, so my contrast now is set. And obviously if I'm going to be delivering this to a client, I would then apply some denoising. And my denoising settings that I like to use, this is always slower, right? Slower for the actual computer to process. But I like to do 5 frames better. My motion is based on how much motion is happening in my scene. For this Luma and Chroma, I usually like to do 12. I found that 12 works fairly well. So this is my computer struggling. And then I like to do the Spartal noise reduction. I like to do that as enhanced. And again, for radius, basically radius, in case you guys are not familiar with that, is think of how much movement is happening in your scene. So if, let's say that it's a moving vehicle that's going from left to right or right to left or up or down or whatever, and there are a lot of things moving in the background, then your setting should not be small. It should be large if it's happening really fast. If it's someone, say it's 2 people having a conversation, and maybe they are talking with their hands like I'm doing right now, then that probably should be set to medium. And if it's a stagnant shot where there is no movement, then that really should be small. And I should totally clarify this. I'm not a Resolve expert. That's just what I've noticed seems to work better. And if anybody in the chat actually already knows what the better options are and you guys want to share with everybody else who's watching, that would be really appreciated. Okay, so with that, I'm now going to go, this again is small because I don't have a lot of movement. I'm going to click on small, and then my Luma and Chroma settings. If there are no people, so here's another thing that I've noticed. If skin tones are not in the shot, then I'm able to push it to about 0.20, 0.23, maybe even 0.24 if I want to get really aggressive. I just have to remember that I'm at the same time softening up the image, okay? If there are skin tones in there, I would absolutely never push it beyond 0.16. For what it's worth, try it on your own, and if you got different results and you want to share them with everybody, that would be really awesome. And I said 0.16, but it's not true. It's 16.0. And also when there are no skin tones involved, it is actually 26.0 or 23.0 or 21.0, as you guys can see here. And what happens, of course, is look at this image compared to whenever this wants to switch over. Yeah, so this is what happens when you're working on a laptop. Okay, so I'm reading, in fact, I'm going to switch to me while this is updating. So my computer is reading the file and it's making adjustments, whatever. So I'm going to read some comments, and then once it switches over, I'll continue with the live stream. So first off, I want to say thank you, Steel Ducky, for stopping by. Victor, thanks again for stopping by. You two are hot in the chat here, so I appreciate it. Let's see. So we already went over what my raw settings were. And how do you know, how to do correctly which situation requires to apply additional LUT node? So I'm going to interpret what that question is. So you're saying, at which stage do you apply the LUT? And for me, and I didn't do this correctly in my LUT adjustment, but usually my first node, I allow it to stay blank. So in fact, I'm going to switch and I'm going to show you kind of what I mean. So I allow this node to stay blank initially, and then I add a node and I make my white balance adjustments in this node, as well as my contrast adjustments. And then in the third node is where I apply the LUT, and in this first node that I left empty on purpose is where I apply denoising. So that's just what I found to work, and in my example, of course, that's not what I did. I applied both my contrast, my raw adjustments, my LUT, and my denoising all on one single node, and that was probably not good for training's sakes, and definitely not accurate to the way that my workflow actually works. But again, this is now the Canon burnt-in LUT, right? The XF AVC file. And if I take this approach of the way that I would normally correct this, obviously I can't change any of my raw settings because this is not raw. So I would start here and I would bring down my lift, which is basically my shadows. Let me show you. It's a little too aggressive. There we go. And then I would bring up my gain. And if you guys remember, I like to keep my gain right between 768 and 896. So that's a little higher than I want. This is basically the same thing that I have on my previous clip. This is going to take a moment to switch over again because, of course, I'm on a laptop, as I've been saying. And finally, here we are. So if we look at my scope here, so my waveform, 768, you can see it's this little highlight in red is kind of touching the 768 line, and this blue line is sort of at the midway point, and I'm not really crushing any shadows. So if I switch back, I guess I could bring my gain up just a tad to try to match it a little bit better. And I could bring my lift down. One more. There we go. Okay. Of course, this is not sharp. It looks pretty soft on my computer. I don't know how it looks on the stream, but it looks pretty soft here. So I'm going to go to my blur tool and I'm going to select sharpen, and I'm going to bring my sharpening down. I normally don't like to go more than 0.47 on both of these. Certainly you could if you want to. I find that I don't like it. I don't like the way it looks. I don't like digital sharpening. And then the only other thing I can do is I can go back and do my denoising. And if I try and do the same settings, so this is small, I think I had 12.1. Let's do 12 and then do better. Nope, do enhanced. Also small, and then 23. There we go. So this doesn't look horrible, but it does look like I missed focus. And that's probably because this is a 2K file instead of the 4K file. Let's look at the raw quick to compare it. And I say quick, but quick is relative when you're working on a laptop. Still waiting. That's pretty awesome. Okay. Nope, still. This is kind of annoying how long it takes. Maybe what I should have done is turned off. I should have turned off denoising. There we go. Now it changed. Check this out. So this is the raw clip. And no, I did not miss focus because I can see the little vents and the window opening and maybe even a little bit of detail inside of this, pedestrian observation balcony thing that's happening on these towers. I can't quite make out the Australian flag, but I know that that is what that is. And if I switch, in fact, I'm going to turn this off, see if it allows me to move a little bit faster. Please, there we go. It's thinking. Oh, so this is the hard part about, okay, here we go. This flag has zero detail. That's not totally horrible. But it is really, really soft in this area. And that has to be the codec, right? Because that codec can only support so much. So this is not bad, but my preference will always be this. It just seems like a much, much, much better option And I didn't even apply any sharpening, did I? I'm pretty sure I didn't. Let's double check. Yeah, I didn't apply any sharpening. So this is 0 sharpening. And of course we could add sharpening right from the raw controls. So this is a much, much, much better option. I'm going to show you guys this clip. I believe this is one of the clips that we used last night. So this is the way that RAW sees it, and of course there is noise there. And this is what, oh, so they're not even the same clip. So that's useless to talk about that. Skip over. Baked in LUT, RAW. I think this one has a lot more detail. So let's work on this as an example. So again, baked in LUT. First off, what I'm going to do, as quickly as I can, I'm going to correct it to what it is that I would deem it as workable for me. Then I'm going to apply the single LUT to my own raw clip from my own LUTs. And then we can compare. And then we'll do that with one more example, and then we're going to wrap it up unless there are some questions that you guys want me to answer. So let's move on. And I'm going to, again, leave the first node alone. I'm going to add a node, serial node. I'm already clipping highlights, which is this very specific highlight. So increasing my gain is not going to help me. To try to offset that, I'm going to switch over to my log wheels, and I'm going to attempt to give myself some headroom with the highlights. And as you can see, the only area in my waveform that is being affected is the actual highlight area. So I'm going to bring those down, again, just to give myself some headroom. And now I'm going to go back to my primary wheels. I'm going to add or lower my lift, which is basically bring down my shadows without clipping any of the blacks. And then I'm going to, I said this yesterday, I really should be using a wheel mouse when I'm doing this, but I'm in my house because I didn't want to do a live stream from my studio and then drive back home. So let's just call it that I was being a little lazy. So I'm going to go ahead and now increase my gain because I gave myself some headroom to brighten up this entire image. And because I know that these are lights, I'm not worried about them exceeding that 896 mark that I like to leave mine in, because it's just the lights. But I'm not going to let them go all the way up to 1023 either. And what we can see is that my other highlights are hovering at about the 640 range. So this is forcing me now to adjust my gamma, which are my midtones, slightly up, and then lower my lift again in an attempt to create the contrast that I want. So to me, this now has enough contrast, and I would, at this point, begin to work on other things like complementary colors, right? So making sure that, because I have so much orange and so much blue, that I have enough separation between the two. So I could begin to work on that if this was going to be my final image. But let's say that this is fine. I'm going to go to my first node, and actually I'll do that at the very end. So now I'm going to go to the raw clip. So this is the raw clip, and again, you can see where my highlights are nowhere near clipping. I'm going to add a node, and I'm going to drop in a LUT from my Canon C200 RAW Pro LUT pack. So here we go, C200 RAW, and I'm going to go with Should we go with either feature, Netflix, or Alexa lookalike? Let's look at Alexa lookalike first. That looks pretty doggone great to me. The highlights are blown out, but that's something we can fix. Let's see what the other ones look like. Let's look at feature. So I like this more because it gives me more color contrast between the blue and the orange. So far, feature is winning. And of course, Netflix is going to give me this same type of color contrast, except it's going to make it a little punchier. And it did. So Netflix is my choice. This is what it is that I would select. And it looks like I'm not blowing out my highlights, except now I can't see the elements inside of this bulb. So what I would do at this point is go to my raw controls, change this to clip settings, and then make some adjustments in my raw settings until I was happy with what that actually looked like. And I would add a tiny bit of exposure just to make sure that I brought my middle exposure back up to this 512, or between the 512 and 640 line in my scopes. So I'm going to increase my exposure. I like the way this is looking a lot. Lower my highlights just a tad. I just want to be able to see a little bit of detail inside of these bulbs. And now I'm ready for noise reduction. So here is raw versus baked in. Oh wow, this shows you just how much. Check this out. Look at all of these balconies, right? Look at how much softer they get when I look at the baked in file. So if we were not comparing these side by side, that might actually be an acceptable file. But when you're seeing them side by side, it really makes me question whether I should ever burn in a LUT into that, XFABC file, because it doesn't appear that that's a wise decision. I wonder if I can sharpen it. So I'm just gonna add a LUT. Add a node. I keep saying LUTs. So I'm going to add a node, and I'm going to go back into sharpen, bring this down to 47. So that sharpened it a little, but it's not enough. It's not punchy enough. Okay, so I'm going really aggressive. I did 44, 45. That's really aggressive. It looks a little bit better, but it also is beginning to look a lot more like video. So I'm going to tone it back down. Burnt in versus dropping in a lot. And again, these are of course not even color correct, or not even denoised yet. This is actually a not bad looking image. And this is where we can see the majority of the noise, right, in the blue channel. So let's look at, just because I'm now curious, obviously, in case you guys don't know, I haven't done this. I didn't do this prior to launching the live stream, so we're both seeing this in real time in case it matters. So let's jump in here, and I want to see what going noise reduction, or reducing the noise here, would do for us. So let's do better. Come on. That's way too aggressive. It's easier for me to just type it in, I think. Okay, 12.5. I'm fine with that. Look at how much less noise there is in here. That's already looking a lot better. I should have done enhanced. I'm gonna bring this back down to like 20.7. Let this process for a moment so that it can update our picture. I guarantee you, if I render this out, you guys would be like, that actually looks pretty good. And I am positive that this shot was shot at least ISO 1000. So this is not the base ISO. It might have been 1600. I don't remember exactly, but it was above 1000 or at 1000 or higher because it was so early in the morning. That looks to me really, really good. I mean, what do you guys think? All right, so let's look at one last example because I don't want to take up everybody's time, and we've already been here for 51 minutes. So this shot is at ISO 800 on the Canon C200 in RAW. This is the burnt in LUT, which actually looks pretty good other than it's a little washed out. But if I scrub here, you can see that the exposure changes when the clouds begin to cover up the sun, right? The rising sun. And then I think I dropped in some NDs at the very end. So that looks okay. I'm going to add a node, and I'm going to drop in the Alexa lookalike LUT. 3D LUTs, raw, Alexa lookalike. Obviously, in the beginning of the shot, I would need to make some adjustments because I totally clipped the highlights. But look at what it does to the rest of the clip as I scrub, okay? Like once I finally adjust my iris and I begin to not actually crush, look at how much detail we have in these clamshells. And each of these are individual tiles, right? And then watch as the sunrise continues. And I'm scrubbing because it's going to be easier than playing it, because when I'm running all these programs at the same time as I'm live streaming, it just doesn't look as cool or as great. But you see how rich these colors are from the sunrise, and how we don't lose any detail in the dark areas or like these grates or this seawall. It just kind of like really, really blows my mind. Of course, I then dropped in my NDs. Let's change that LUT and go with the Netflix LUT, which is one of the more popular ones. So this, obviously, you guys can see it's way, way, way more aggressive. But it doesn't clip the highlights, and it allows them to roll off. That's not bad. One more LUT just because I want to see sort of what it actually looks like, because again, I haven't seen it yet. And I'm going to go with the feature LUT. Oh man, this is my favorite. So I really like this contrast between the pink and the blue, and the way that it is not crushing these shadows here. So, and I like the way my scope looks. That looks like a really, really healthy scope. Maybe not in the beginning of the clip. Yeah, no, not in the beginning. But once I got my exposure set correctly, that looks good. That looks really good. To me. You guys can disagree, and if you do, be sure to let me know in the comment. Can I get the XF AVC file to look like that? Honestly, I don't know, but then maybe more importantly, if all I had to do was drop in a LUT, like why would I want to struggle with this? Right? Like maybe, and I'm not trying to sell you guys on it, but because I'm one that time is worth more than anything else, it seems like that's a much better option for me. But because we're doing this live stream, let's try it. So we're going to go add a node. I'm going to get to where I actually had the exposure better or in better shape. And then let's see if we could increase the gain. Clouds, and then drop my lift. Too much. All right. So maybe the biggest realization that I'm getting out of this whole exercise is the fact that the MXF file, it gives you a ton of flexibility, right? So the codec doesn't break. So that's good. I didn't see any banding in the sky. That's also good. But how soft that image is just not something that I really want to live with. And that's kind of where I'm at with this at this point, because as I'm looking at it, it looks too soft for my taste. Way, way, way too soft for my taste. Try to sharpen it a bit. It does okay. What does my saturation look like? That also looks okay. So if this is as good as I can get it with the MXF file, then I've just convinced myself that I should always, when I'm shooting or when I'm capturing on the Canon C200, I should always capture in RAW, and I should always consider using my Canon RAW C200 Pro LUTs. Okay, so we got GX Oast, so I'm gonna guess it's Ghost. So YouTube sent you to my stream. Well, thanks for joining, man. Really appreciate it. And that's really all I wanted to go through, guys. I mean, bottom line is if you own a Canon C200, you have the ability to shoot in RAW. It's going to add a little bit to your workflow. But the reality is that your image is not going to be soft. So you don't need to worry about that. And there's a super quick and easy way to essentially get an image to look what I would consider to be better than what the burnt-in LUT is, or the Canon provided LUTs are, and that's just drop one of my LUTs. If you guys have not seen my LUTs, I'll be sure to add them in the notes so you guys can check them out. But that would be my takeaway. And I mean, clearly this image is one of several that we went over on how much different it is, but I mean, look at this one. I almost forgot to switch there. So let's let this catch up. Oh, because I did the denoising. But here's another example. And again, pay attention to these balconies. And then, of course, here is the Canon burnt-in one. Not as cool. In fact, it's a little bit too soft. And then if we look at the bridge example, so let's try and get there quick here. So Ghost, you order the Blackmagic Pocket 4K and it comes within a week. You got your Metabones delivered. That's cool. Congratulations. You're gonna really enjoy that camera. That camera is really, really nice. It's I could talk tech all day, guys, just so you know. But I'm going to tell you this. I had a fairly large commercial project that I was working on 2 weeks ago. And I used two of the Pocket 6K, so Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6Ks, two of them, and I used my red. And can I just tell you that that is a magical combination? It just, everything was super smooth, and we had back to back to back 12-hour shoot days, and all three of those cameras performed like a beast. I had another project that was not quite that many days in a row where I again used two, did I use two? I might have used three of the Pocket 6K cameras for 6 hours straight, capturing in B-RAW. And I think that the one feature that is, it's understated, and I wish on the press conference, I believe his name is Perry. I don't remember who the president or the CEO is of Blackmagic. But what he touched on, and it's kind of an understatement in terms of how much time it saves you, is the way that you could use timecode to essentially sync up all three cameras and make your edits that much faster and accurate, because timecode is a super accurate thing. So you're going to really enjoy it. I still, to this day, believe that the Pocket 4K and Pocket 6K cameras are the absolute best cameras that you can own today to learn filmmaking. Not just exposing an image, not just lighting, not just, the grip or electrical department or any of that, but the entire workflow, because the ecosystem that's in place for Blackmagic is unmatched. It's unmatched with Canon, it's unmatched with Panasonic, it's unmatched with Sony. Red is probably the one that comes the closest to it, but it is not there. And definitely it's maybe Arri, because just about every NLE automatically corrects Arri log C. That might be a little bit easier, and you're capturing in ProRes most of the time. If you're doing log C, generally, I'll say this: anytime that I've actually had a project where I'm shooting using Arri and we are shooting in RAW, I'm not the guy that color corrects, color grades, edits, and does the final delivery. I'm the guy that is operating the camera and then handing off the magazine to somebody else. So anyway, that's where that was going. So let me show you the last example, and then we're going to wrap this up. So this is again, the raw clip with the single LUT dropped into it. And then here is the XF AVC file with the burnt in Canon LUT, corrected to the best of what it is that I can do to try to match it. And it just looks soft. It just looks soft. Not as punchy. And maybe if it's just for phone delivery, maybe that's good enough. Okay, so have I have a lot of experience? Have I done video with tips to get jobs, network, and tell your story? No. That's probably not true. Anytime that we do talk shop is generally in a live stream. And I don't leave my live streams up for more than a couple days, and sometimes less than that. And this live stream has gone on for more than an hour, so the likelihood of it making it to Tuesday morning is very low. I just don't want anyone to come in and see that that's my latest video and then decide I don't have an hour to invest and then never come back or not subscribe. On the flip side, when you guys do support the channel, participate in live streams, make comments on the community tab, or reach out to me via a comment, Instagram or Twitter, I always make it a point to respond. And I like to think of it as the more we all know, the more we all can, work and grow. And an example of that is there's a project coming up in New Orleans, as an example. Well, I actually have now, through the YouTube channel, thanks to all of you who subscribe and follow, I now have friends that are actually there on ground. So for my project, it's easier for me to crew up using them, having them help me, than it is for me to fly in a crew. Do you get what I'm saying? So because of YouTube, these types of connections are possible, and I can collaborate with more people. So if I share sort of what it is that I'm going through, how it is that I'm getting clients, what is it that keeps clients coming back, and you guys are doing all the same things, at some point, hopefully, we end up working together. And we're all speaking sort of the same language. And that's what the biggest benefit is to me. But then on the flip side, if I can help anyone avoid a single mistake that I made, then I feel like I'm winning. That's just the reality of it. So let's see. So Ghost has another comment. For someone who is starting out a journey into the world of full-time filmmaking. So I think the very first thing that anyone who is starting a business today, or even if, let's say that you have been shooting, I need to stop saying shooting because YouTube doesn't like it, has been filming or grew up on the still side and is transitioning from photo to video, which there are a lot of people that I've met throughout my journey on YouTube that fit that category. The very first thing that everyone needs to understand, and this is going to sound oversimplified, but it isn't. If what you have to offer allows you to help that brand, that company, that individual make money, they will continue to pay your day rate. So before you start working with anyone, or let's say you're prospecting, right? Maybe you don't have any clients that are actively seeking you out. Maybe you decide that you want to go after dentists or attorneys. You have to find out what their pain point is, and then think of a way that you could present your services to help them avoid their pain point and speak to their ideal customer. And what I mean by ideal customer, so now I'm talking about marketing, and this is another one of those things that I could talk about all day because it's fascinating. I just really enjoy it. But essentially, every single type of business, it doesn't matter if it's a oil change shop, or if it's a web designer, or a wedding dressmaker. Okay? Every single one of those, of all types of businesses across all industries, they all have an ideal type of customer, and they have a pain in the butt customer. Pain in the butt's aggressive. They have a customer that's less than ideal, let's just say. If what you're able to present is able to allow them to go from, let's say, a 50% of their customers are not ideal, 50% are. If you allow them to tip the scales to where their ideal customers are much more prominent than their less than ideal customers, you will end up getting a lot of business from them, a lot of repeat business from them, and a lot of referral business from them. And the only way to do that is to learn. And I said this in my live stream yesterday. Regardless of the profession, it's kind of our job, as long as we're in the workforce, in the work market, to continue to learn and continue to adapt, because things, just like cameras, change. So do trends, so do people's shopping habits, so do the way that people expect to set up appointments with customers or interact with their product or their service or their software. And anytime that there is a shift, it creates a monumental opportunity for all of us who work in this creative space and call ourselves filmmakers. So I'm going to get off my soapbox, and that's, unless there are any other questions, I think we're going to wrap it up. I really appreciate all of you. If you guys enjoy this type of content, or you want to see some very specific type of content, be sure to, drop a note. You guys can always catch me on Instagram or on Twitter. And for those of you who have my cell phone number, feel free to text me whenever you want. I love talking shop, as you guys can tell. Thanks again for watching this. And if you guys enjoy it, let me know. If you haven't subscribed and you feel that this is something of value to you, please don't hesitate. And if you want to share with anybody that might find it interesting, I'll make a commitment that I'll leave this video up through the end of the day on Tuesday. Okay, thanks again, guys, and I'll catch you guys later. Till next time, I'm Carlos, and let's wrap this up.